The sun hung high above the long, flat roof of the garage, beating down on the asphalt outside, but inside, the air was cool and smelled heavily of oil, rubber, and old metal. It was a smell that Sam had come to love over the last 40 years. To him, it wasn't just a smell, it was the scent of honesty. Machines didn't lie. If they were broken, they told you so. If you treated them well, they purred like kittens. Sam stood by a workbench, his hands buried deep in the guts of a classic 1969 Mustang. The car was a beautiful shade of emerald green, and it belonged to a collector who treated it better than most people treated their own children. Sam was in his late 60s now. His hair was steel gray and thinning on top, and his face was a map of deep lines that had formed from years of squinting at engines and smiling at customers. He wore faded blue coveralls that had his name stitched on the pocket in red thread that was now turning pink. He moved slowly, deliberately. He wasn't in a rush. He knew that rushing was how mistakes happened. He picked up a wrench, felt the weight of it in his hand, and turned a bolt just a fraction of an inch. "Easy does it," he whispered to himself. "We don't want to strip her." The garage had changed over the years. It used to be a small, family-run place where everyone knew everyone's name. But a few months ago, it had been bought by a large corporation. They wanted to turn it into a high-end luxury service center. The sign outside had changed, the floors had been painted a shiny gray, and the waiting room now smelled of expensive coffee instead of stale donuts. But the biggest change was the management. The heavy metal door at the front of the shop swung open with a clang that echoed through the bays. Sam didn't look up immediately. He was listening to the sound of the engine he was tuning, but he knew who it was by the rhythm of the footsteps. They were fast, sharp, and angry. Click, click, click on the concrete floor. It was Greg, the new general manager. Greg was a man in his 30s who wore suits that cost more than Sam's first truck. He always carried a clipboard and a tablet, and he always looked like he had somewhere better to be. He didn't know a piston from a spark plug, but he knew spreadsheets and profit margins. To Greg, the garage wasn't a place of craftsmanship, it was a factory, and the mechanics were just cogs that were turning too slowly. Greg marched right up to Sam's bay, the smell of his cologne fighting a losing battle against the odor of gasoline. "Sam," Greg said, his voice tight. "I thought I told you to have this Mustang out of here by noon." Sam finally looked up, wiping a smudge of grease from his forehead with the back of his wrist. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was 10 minutes past 12. "I know, Greg," Sam said, his voice raspy but calm. "But the timing was off. I had to adjust the carburetor. If I rushed it, the car would backfire." "You don't want a classic car like this backfiring. It could damage the valves." Greg let out a long, dramatic sigh, looking at his tablet as if it held the secrets of the universe. "Sam, we charge by the hour. We quoted this customer for 4 hours. You have been working on this for 6. That is 2 hours of lost labor. 2 hours of lost revenue. Do you understand how that looks on my weekly report?" Sam looked back at the engine. He ran his hand gently over the manifold. "It looks like we did the job right, Greg. The customer brings his cars here because he knows they leave better than they came in. That's reputation. You can't put a price tag on that." "I can put a price tag on everything," Greg snapped. "And right now, you are costing this shop money." He looked around the shop, shaking his head. "We need turnover. In, out, fast. That is how you make money in this business. We aren't running a museum for old cars. We are running a service center. A few of the younger mechanics nearby stopped working to watch. They were standing around a red sedan, holding wrenches, their eyes wide. They liked Sam. He was the guy who taught them how to find a leak without using a computer and how to listen to an engine to hear what was wrong. They felt bad for him. Greg had been riding him hard for weeks, looking for any excuse to get rid of the dead weight, as he called it in the break room. Sam didn't get angry. He just felt tired. He had been working in this shop since before Greg was born. He had fixed the owner's cars, his kids' cars, and now his grandkids' cars. He took pride in his work. He picked up a rag and began to wipe his hands slowly. "The car is ready now," Sam said softly. She purrs. "You can take the keys." Greg snatched the keys off the workbench. "I'll handle the customer. You go clean up your station. It looks like a pigsty in here." Sam watched Greg walk away, his shiny shoes clicking all the way to the front office. Sam looked down at his station. It wasn't messy. It was organized. Every tool had its place. But to a man like Greg, grease and oil looked like dirt. Sam didn't say a word. He just put his wrenches back in the box, one by one. Clang. 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 The sound was rhythmic and soothing. Later that afternoon, the shop was buzzing with activity. A tow truck dropped off a luxury SUV in the bay next to Sam. It was a fancy European make, all chrome and leather. The driver, a young man named Ben who had just started working there a month ago, looked at the SUV with wide eyes. "Hey, Sam," Ben called out. "Check this out. The owner says the engine is making a weird ticking noise. I can't find it anywhere." Sam walked over, his knees popping a little as he squatted down. He put a hand on the fender. "Open the hood, kid." Ben popped the hood. Sam leaned in, closing his eyes for a moment just to listen. The engine was running, smooth and quiet. But then, faintly, he heard it. A tiny, rhythmic tick. It wasn't a rod or a piston, it was something smaller. "Grab me a long screwdriver," Sam said. Ben handed it to him. Sam pressed the handle of the screwdriver against his ear and the metal tip against different parts of the engine block, using it like a doctor's stethoscope. He moved it around the valve covers, then down toward the bottom. He stopped near the water pump. "There," Sam said, pulling the screwdriver away. "The water pump bearing is going. It's not shot yet, but give it a week, and it'll seize up. If that happens on the highway, the belt snaps, the engine overheats, and you're looking at a blown head gasket." Ben looked amazed. "How did you hear that it's so quiet?" "Experience," Sam said with a small smile. "You learn to listen to what the car is telling you. Don't just look at the computer codes. Use your ears and your hands." Just then, Greg came storming out of the office again. He saw Sam and Ben standing by the SUV. "What is going on here?" Greg demanded. "Why is this car still not diagnosed? The software gave you an error code, didn't it just replace what the code says and move on?" Ben looked nervous. "The code said it was a sensor, but Sam found a bad water pump." Greg turned his glare toward Sam. "Are we paying you to diagnose cars now? I assigned Ben to this. He needs to learn." "I was just helping him," Sam said, standing up straight. "The computer was wrong. If he replaced the sensor, the customer would be back in 3 days with an overheated engine. I was saving the shop some trouble." Greg stepped closer, invading Sam's personal space. He was taller and broader, using his size to try and intimidate the older man. "Let me tell you something, Sam. We have technology now. We don't need feelings or intuition. We follow the protocol. Every time you go off script, you mess up my efficiency ratings. We are a corporate entity now, not a back alley repair shop." Sam looked Greg in the eye. There was no fear in his gaze, just a steady, sad calm. "Cars are mechanical, Greg. They don't follow protocols. They follow physics. You can bully the staff, and you can bully the numbers, but you can't bully the laws of physics." The other mechanics in the shop froze. Nobody talked to Greg like that. Greg's face turned a shade of red that matched the sedan nearby. "I have had enough of your attitude," Greg hissed, keeping his voice low so the customers in the waiting room wouldn't hear. "You think you're irreplaceable, you think you're some kind of wizard, you're just a dinosaur. A slow, expensive dinosaur who is taking up space that could be used by someone younger, faster, and cheaper." He turned to Ben. "You, finish the water pump. And do it within the book time, or I'm writing you up." Ben nodded quickly and scrambled to get his tools. Greg turned back to Sam. "And you? Go to the break room. I don't want to see you on the floor for the rest of the day. You're distracting the real workers." Sam stood there for a moment. He looked at the SUV, at the young mechanic rushing to fix it, and at the other guys who were pretending not to listen. He felt a heavy weight in his chest. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the soul of the place. They were treating cars like appliances and mechanics like robots. Sam didn't want to fight. He just wanted to work. But it seemed like doing his job well had become a crime. "All right," Sam said quietly. "I'll go." He walked away slowly. He didn't go to the break room, though. He walked toward the back, to the small locker room where he kept his belongings. He sat on the wooden bench that had been there since the 70s. He looked at his hands. They were rough, scarred, and permanently stained. These hands had fixed thousands of cars. They had put food on the table for his family and put his kids through college. He felt a lump forming in his throat. He wasn't ready to retire, but he couldn't work like this. He couldn't work for a man who saw quality as a waste of time. He sat there for a long time, listening to the muffled sounds of the air wrenches and the shouts from the shop floor. It felt like the world was moving too fast, leaving him behind. Outside, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The day was almost over, but Sam knew the real storm was just beginning. He could feel it in his bones. Greg wasn't going to stop with the lecture. He was going to make good on his threats. The old way of life was under siege, and Sam was the first line of defense, standing alone with nothing but his wrenches and his principles. The morning sun had barely cleared the rooftops when the sound of a heavy diesel engine rumbled into the parking lot. It was a flatbed truck, carrying a load that made every mechanic in the shop stop what they were doing and look. Sitting on the back of the truck was a vintage Porsche 911, its silver paint gleaming like liquid mercury even under the dusty light of the garage. It was a rare machine, the kind of car that usually sat in a climate-controlled garage, only coming out for sunny Sundays and car shows. Sam wiped his hands on a rag and walked to the bay door, his eyes wide. He knew this model. It was an air-cooled classic, complicated and temperamental, but beautiful in a way modern cars weren't. It was a piece of history on wheels. The driver of the truck lowered the ramp carefully, and a man in a sharp suit stepped out of a following black sedan to meet them. It was the owner, a wealthy collector named Mr. Henderson. Sam had met him a few times over the years. Mr. Henderson was a man who appreciated quiet skill. He shook Sam's hand warmly. "Sam," Mr. Henderson said. "I'm glad you're here. This old girl is running a bit rough. I'm getting a vibration at high speeds, and she's leaking a bit of oil. I need someone who knows these air-cooled engines inside and out. Everyone else just wants to plug in a computer." Sam smiled, feeling a spark of excitement he hadn't felt in weeks. "I can take care of her, sir. These engines have souls. You just have to know how to talk to them." Before Mr. Henderson could answer, the glass door to the office swung open. Greg marched out, his tie perfectly knotted, a fake smile plastered on his face. He had seen the car pull in and smelled money. "Mr. Henderson," Greg called out, rushing past Sam as if the old mechanic were invisible. "Welcome to Arch Auto. I'm the general manager. We are absolutely honored to service such a fine vehicle." Mr. Henderson gave a polite nod. "I was just asking Sam to look at it. He's worked on my cars for years." Greg's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. He put a hand on Mr. Henderson's shoulder, steering him slightly away from Sam. "Well, Sam is certainly experienced. But we have updated our protocols. I have a specialist on our team now, Kevin. He's fresh from technical school and trained specifically on modern performance metrics. He's faster and more efficient. We can have this turned around for you in 2 days." Sam felt a knot form in his stomach. 2 days, he stepped in, unable to help himself. "Greg, to diagnose a vibration on a flat 6 engine and fix an oil leak properly, you need to drop the engine. That takes time. You can't rush it. If Kevin rushes it, he might crack the case or miss the main seal. 2 days is impossible to do it right." Greg turned on him, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Stay in your lane, Sam. I'm handling the client." Mr. Henderson looked between them, looking uneasy. "I don't mind waiting a week if it's done right," he said. "I just want it perfect." "Nonsense." Greg laughed loudly, forcing the cheerfulness. "We pride ourselves on speed and precision. Kevin will handle it. He's our future. Right, Kevin?" Kevin, a young mechanic in his 20s with flashy tattoos and a loud radio, grinned and gave a thumbs up from the next bay. He was good at changing oil and changing tires, but he had never touched an engine this rare. He didn't know the history or the quirks. "I'll get it done, boss," Kevin said confidently. Greg clapped his hands together. "See, confidence. That's what we sell here, Mr. Henderson. Confidence and speed. You leave it with us." The wealthy client hesitated, looking at Sam one last time. Sam wanted to argue, wanted to tell the man to take his car and run, but he saw the look in Greg's eyes. It was a warning. "One word and you're done." So, Sam stayed silent. He just nodded slowly and lowered his eyes. Mr. Henderson signed the papers and left, looking less than convinced. As soon as the client was out the door, the atmosphere in the shop changed. Greg strutted back to the front, looking like a rooster in a hen house. He ordered Kevin to roll the Porsche into the main bay, the one with the best light. "Listen up," Greg announced to the whole shop. "This is a high-profile job. I want it done fast. I want it done yesterday. This is the kind of job that puts us on the map. No cutting corners, but no wasting time either." Sam couldn't watch. He went back to his own bay, but his mind was on the silver Porsche. He knew Kevin. He was a nice enough kid, but he was rough. He used force when he should have used finesse. An hour passed. Then, Sam heard the sound of an air impact wrench screaming at high speed. It was a violent sound. He winced. You never used an impact wrench on the delicate aluminum bolts of a vintage Porsche. You stripped them that way. You had to use a torque wrench, by hand. Sam walked over to the bay. Kevin was underneath the car, blasting away with the wrench. Kevin, Sam said, his voice calm. You need to be careful with those crankcase bolts. They're soft. If you strip one, you're looking at a helicoil repair, at least. Or you might crack the engine block. Kevin slid out from under the car, looking annoyed. He wiped grease on his arm. I know what I'm doing, Sam. Greg wants this done. I'm using the impact to get them off fast. It's fine. It's not fine, Sam insisted gently. That metal is 40 years old. It's brittle. Let me show you the right way to loosen them. Sam reached down to pick up a breaker bar. Before he could touch it, a shadow fell over the bay. It was Greg. He had been watching from the office window. What is going on here? Greg demanded, his voice echoing off the metal walls. Just helping him with the bolts, Greg, Sam said. They're sensitive. If he strips. I didn't ask for your help. Greg shouted. The shop went completely silent. Every mechanic stopped working. Even the background noise of the radio seemed to fade away. I told Kevin to do the job. I told you to stay away. Why can't you follow a simple instruction? I'm trying to save the car, Sam said, his voice rising slightly. And the shop's reputation. You're going to ruin that engine. Greg stepped right up to Sam, his face purple with rage. He didn't care about the car. He cared about being challenged in front of his employees. Reputation. You're the one ruining the reputation. You're slow, you're expensive, and you're constantly undermining my authority. You think you're the king of this garage, don't you? You think this place can't run without you. Sam looked around the shop. He saw Ben looking down at his shoes. He saw Kevin looking awkward, holding the wrench. He saw the fear in everyone's eyes. They were all thinking the same thing, that could be me. I don't think I'm a king, Greg, Sam said quietly. I just think the customer deserves a safe car. The customer wants speed. Greg yelled. The customer wants efficiency. The customer doesn't care about your feelings or your old school habits. We are a corporation now. We function on teamwork and protocols, not on the ego of an old man who refuses to retire. Greg took a breath and pointed a finger directly in Sam's face. You are a dinosaur, you are a weight around our necks. Every day you stay here, you hold us back. I'm done with it. I'm done with you slowing us down. I'm done with you questioning my orders in front of the staff. Sam felt the blood drain from his face. He knew what was coming. Get your stuff, Greg said coldly. You're fired. Greg, come on, Ben spoke up from the back, his voice shaking. He's just trying to help. It's a Porsche, man. Greg spun around. Did I ask you to speak? Keep your mouth shut or you can join him. He turned back to Sam. I'm not joking, Sam. Clear out your locker. Leave your badge. Security will escort you out. Sam looked at the silver Porsche one last time. He looked at the young mechanic, Kevin, who looked guilty but stayed silent. Sam realized then that it was truly over. The world he knew, the world of grease and grit and honor, was gone. It had been replaced by spreadsheets and shouting. "Okay," Sam said. His voice didn't crack. He didn't cry. He just felt an immense sense of tiredness. "I'll go." "Don't think you're getting a reference," Greg added as Sam turned away. "If anyone calls, I'll tell them the truth. That you were difficult, slow, and incompetent." Sam walked slowly to the back room. The silence in the garage was deafening. The only sound was the squeak of his boots on the concrete floor. It felt like a walk of shame, but he held his head high. He hadn't done anything wrong. He was trying to protect a machine. He opened his old metal locker. It was bare, save for a few family photos and his lunchbox. He took the photos down one by one. There was one of his wife, who had passed away 5 years ago. There was one of his daughter graduating from college. He stared at them for a long moment, blinking rapidly. He grabbed his work bag. He had his own tools, the ones he had collected over a lifetime. They were heavy. He put them in his bag, the metal clanking together. It was a sad sound, like the final toll of a bell. When he came back out, the mechanics were all pretending to work, bent over hoods and fenders, but nobody was moving. They were frozen. Sam walked past Kevin and the Porsche. "Be careful with that cam tensioner," Sam said softly to Kevin. "It's tricky." Kevin didn't look up. He just nodded almost imperceptibly. Sam walked through the shop, past the bays, past the tire machine. He reached the front counter and placed his badge on the desk. Greg was standing there, arms crossed, looking smug. He looked like he had just won a prize. "Good riddance," Greg muttered under his breath, just loud enough for Sam to hear. Sam pushed the heavy door open. The bell above it chimed, a cheerful sound that felt completely out of place. He stepped out into the bright afternoon sun. The air was warm, but Sam felt cold. He walked to his old pickup truck parked in the back row. It was a Ford, rusty and reliable, much like its owner. He unlocked the door and threw his heavy tool bag onto the passenger seat. It landed with a thud. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. His hands were shaking slightly. He had worked at that shop for 30 years. It was his second home. It was where he went when he needed to escape. Now, he had nowhere to go. He had a mortgage, bills, and now, no paycheck. He looked at the garage building one last time. He could see the shiny cars through the glass front, and he could see Greg inside, pacing around and barking orders. The shop would go on. Cars would get fixed, maybe not as well, but they would get fixed. But the heart of the place was gone. Sam started the engine. It turned over slowly, then roared to life. He put the truck in gear and drove out of the parking lot. He didn't look back. He couldn't. As he drove down the street, he felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. He wasn't angry for himself, really. He was old enough to take a hit. He was angry for the cars. He was angry that craftsmanship didn't matter anymore. He was angry that a man like Greg could destroy a lifetime of work with a few harsh words. But what Sam didn't know, as he turned the corner and headed toward the highway, was that the story wasn't over. The silver Porsche in the bay was still ticking, and destiny had a way of fixing things that efficiency couldn't. Sam didn't know that a very famous, very quiet actor was about to walk into that shop, looking for a man who knew how to listen to an engine. But for now, Sam was just an old mechanic driving home in the middle of the day, feeling like he had been thrown away. He turned on the radio, but there was nothing but static, so he drove in silence, alone with his thoughts. The heavy metal door swung shut behind Sam, and the bell above it stopped ringing. The silence that followed was heavy and thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. Inside the shop, the air conditioning hummed, but it felt colder than usual. The young mechanics stood frozen in their places, looking at the spot where Sam had just been standing. It felt empty. It felt wrong. Ben looked over at Kevin, who was still holding the impact wrench, staring at the floor. "Did that really just happen?" Ben asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kevin swallowed hard and looked at the vintage Porsche sitting in the bay. "Yeah. It happened. And now I have to finish this car." Greg was still standing near the front counter, looking triumphant. He straightened his tie and smoothed down his suit jacket, as if he had just won a great battle. He clapped his hands together loudly, breaking the trance the other mechanics were in. "All right, show's over," Greg barked. "Back to work. We have a schedule to keep. Kevin, I want that Porsche engine dropped and reset by the end of the day. Don't let the old man's fear slow you down. Use the air tools. Just get it done." Kevin nodded, though his face was pale with sweat. He pulled the creeper back under the car. He tried to ignore the nagging voice in his head that sounded just like Sam. "Be gentle. Don't force it." But Greg was watching from the office window, his eyes like a hawk. Kevin took a deep breath, pulled the trigger on the wrench, and went back to work. The hours ticked by. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows through the garage windows. The mood in the shop was miserable. Usually, by this time of day, Sam would have been telling a joke or sharing a story about the old days, making the time pass faster. Now, there was only the noise of metal on metal and the occasional shout from Greg. Around 4 o'clock, the trouble started. Kevin was trying to remove a stubborn bolt from the engine casing. It was rusty and tight. He grunted, pushing the impact wrench harder. The tool whined angrily. With a loud, sharp snap, the bolt had twisted off. The metal broke clean. Kevin froze. He dropped the wrench and scrambled out from under the car, his heart hammering in his chest. He stared at the broken bolt, half of it still stuck deep inside the engine block. "Ben," Kevin called out, his voice shaking. "Ben, I need help." Ben came running over. He looked under the hood and his face fell. "Oh no. You stripped it?" "It snapped off," Kevin said, panic rising in his throat. "It's deep in there, Ben. We're going to have to drill it out. If we mess up the drilling, we ruin the block. This is a collector's car." Just then, the front door chimed. Both young mechanics jumped. They looked toward the entrance. A man walked in. He was dressed simply, wearing a worn-out leather jacket over a plain t-shirt, faded jeans, and scuffed boots. He had a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, and a day's worth of stubble on his chin. He didn't look like the usual wealthy clientele. He looked like he had just finished a long ride on a motorcycle. The stranger walked slowly into the shop, his hands in his pockets. He didn't head for the counter. Instead, he walked toward the bays. He moved with a quiet, easy grace. He stopped near the silver Porsche and looked at it with a familiar, appreciative gaze. He ran a finger lightly along the fender, wiping away a speck of dust. Greg came out of his office, his usual fake smile plastered on his face. He saw the stranger and quickly sized him up. Greg assumed this was just a delivery driver or someone looking for a cheap oil change. He didn't see a suit or a Rolex, so he didn't see a big sale. "Can I help you?" Greg asked, his tone dismissive. The service counter is that way. If you're looking for a job, we're not hiring. The stranger didn't look at Greg immediately. He kept looking at the Porsche. He noticed the tool cart shoved haphazardly to the side. He noticed the grease smears where they shouldn't be. He noticed the lack of care. "I'm not here for a job," the stranger said. His voice was deep, calm, and steady. "I'm here to check on my car." Greg's ears perked up at the word car. He looked at the Porsche, then back at the stranger. He frowned. "This is your car?" "It is," the stranger said. He finally turned to look at Greg. He had kind eyes, but they were intense. "I dropped it off this morning. A silver Porsche 911. Greg straightened up, changing his tune instantly. If this guy owned the Porsche, he had money. Maybe he just dressed like a slob. "Oh. Of course, sir. My apologies. We weren't expecting you to pick it up until tomorrow. But, good news. We are ahead of schedule. My team is making excellent progress." The stranger looked past Greg, toward the back of the bay where Kevin and Ben were huddled together, looking terrified. "Is that so?" the stranger asked. "It looks like there's a bit of a situation back there." "Just a minor adjustment," Greg lied smoothly, stepping in front of the stranger to block his view. "Standard procedure. Nothing to worry about. We have our best man, Kevin, on it right now. He's young, but he's incredibly fast. Much faster than the older mechanic we used to have." The stranger's eyes narrowed slightly. "The older mechanic, the gray-haired gentleman Sam?" Greg scoffed and waved his hand in the air. "Oh, him. We let him go this morning. He was, let's just say he didn't fit in with our new vision. He was too slow. Too stuck in the past. We are moving toward a more modern, efficient operation. You don't want to pay for Sam to take all day, do you? I saved you money." The stranger stood very still. The shop seemed to get quieter. Even the air compressor seemed to stop humming. The stranger took a slow breath. "You fired Sam?" the stranger asked quietly. "It was a business decision," Greg said, puffing out his chest. "He was holding us back. Frankly, he was a relic. We don't need relics here. We need speed." The stranger looked at the car again. He walked over to the open hood. Greg tried to follow, but the stranger held up a hand, stopping him. The stranger leaned over the engine. He wasn't a mechanic, but he wasn't stupid. He had owned this car for years. He knew what it sounded like. He knew what it looked like. He saw the oil leaking where it shouldn't be. He saw the way the belts were hanging loose. And he saw Kevin and Ben whispering frantically in the corner, holding a broken bolt like it was a bomb. "Is the car ready to drive?" the stranger asked. "Almost," Greg said, sweating a little now. "Just a few final touches." "I'd like to hear it start," the stranger said. Greg swallowed hard. He looked back at Kevin and made a frantic chopping motion with his hand, signaling them to get it running. Kevin looked terrified. He looked at the broken bolt, then at the stranger, then at Greg. "Kevin, start it up!" Greg yelled. Kevin got into the driver's seat. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the key. He looked at Ben, who mouthed, "I'm sorry." Kevin turned the key. The engine groaned. It churned and coughed. A cloud of blue smoke puffed out from the back. There was a horrible screeching sound, metal grinding against metal, followed by a loud bang. Kevin instantly turned the key off. The silence that returned was deafening. The stranger closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "That didn't sound like efficient progress," he said softly. Greg turned bright red. He spun around to face Kevin. "What did you do? I told you to fix it." "It snapped, boss," Kevin yelled back, his voice cracking. "The bolt snapped. Just like Sam said it would. I told you we shouldn't have used the impact wrench." Greg froze. He looked at the stranger, whose face was like stone. "Sam said it would," the stranger asked. He warned me," Kevin admitted, stepping out of the car. He felt terrible. He didn't want to lose his job, but he couldn't lie anymore. "Sam said the metal was brittle. He said we needed to do it by hand. But Greg made us rush." The stranger turned to face Greg. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just looked at him with a look of pure disappointment. "You fired the one man who knew how to take care of this car, and then you forced your inexperienced staff to ruin it." "Sir, I can explain," Greg stammered. "This is just a setback. We will fix it. We will pay for the parts." "I don't care about the parts," the stranger said, his voice dropping an octave. "I care about the car. And I care about people who know what they are doing. Sam has taken care of my cars for 10 years. I brought this car here specifically for him." The stranger reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a wallet. He flipped it open and held it up to Greg's face. It wasn't a driver's license. It was a badge. Not a police badge, but a corporate identification card. It had a logo on it, the same logo that was on the sign outside the shop, but with owner written underneath it. Greg's eyes went wide. He stared at the name on the card. Then he looked up at the face under the baseball cap. The stubble, the nose, the eyes. It was the actor. The famous one who rode motorcycles and loved cars. The one who everyone said had bought this chain of shops quietly last year. "You?" Greg choked out. "I'm the owner," the stranger said, putting his wallet away. "My name is Keanu. And I didn't buy this shop to see classic cars get destroyed by people who care more about spreadsheets than craftsmanship." The shop was dead silent. Ben's mouth was open. Kevin looked like he was going to faint. Greg took a step back, his legs hitting the counter behind him. But you were supposed to be coming next week," Greg whispered, his voice trembling. "I decided to stop in early," Keanu said. He looked around the shop, at the unhappy faces of the mechanics. "I wanted to see how things were going. I wanted to see if Sam was happy. I see now that he wasn't. And I see why." Keanu walked past a trembling Greg and went to the bay door. He looked out into the parking lot, just in time to see an old, rusty pickup truck turning the corner at the far end of the street. "Where is he going?" Keanu asked, pointing to the truck. "Home," Ben spoke up bravely. "He lives on the other side of town. Off the old highway." Keanu nodded. He turned back to Greg. "You have a lot of explaining to do. But first, I'm going to go find Sam. If I have to drive to the end of the state to get him, I will." He looked at the ruined engine of the Porsche one last time, shook his head in sadness, and walked toward the door. He pushed it open, the bell chiming again. This time, the sound wasn't cheerful. It sounded like a judgment. Greg stood alone in the middle of the floor. He looked at the mechanics, who were all looking at him with a mix of fear and satisfaction. He realized then that his power was gone. The real boss was here, and the real boss wasn't happy. Greg had played a game of chicken with a man who had principles, and he had lost. He looked down at his expensive shoes, wishing he could disappear into the concrete floor. Outside, the engine of a very famous man's motorcycle roared to life, signaling the hunt for the old mechanic had begun. The roar of the motorcycle engine cut through the afternoon air, a sharp contrast to the rumble of the old pickup truck ahead of him. Keanu leaned forward over the handlebars, his eyes focused on the rusted tailgate of Sam's truck. He wasn't riding fast, just fast enough to close the gap. The wind whipped at his jacket, but he didn't feel the cold. He only felt a burning sense of urgency and a heavy weight of regret in his chest. He hadn't known Sam was being pushed out. He had trusted the corporate reports and the emails from management that claimed everything was running smoothly. He had been too busy with his own life to check on the shop that meant so much to him. Up ahead, Sam drove with his hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2, just like he had taught his children. He wasn't looking in the rearview mirror. He was just trying to get home. His heart still felt bruised from the way Greg had spoken to him. It wasn't the words themselves, it was the dismissal. The feeling that 40 years of loyalty meant nothing. He pulled up to a red light at a dusty intersection on the edge of town. The truck sighed as it came to a stop. Keanu pulled up in the lane next to him. The light turned red, and the silence of the moment was filled with the idling of the two engines. Keanu took off his helmet and shook his hair out. He turned his head and looked straight into the driver's side window of the truck. Sam sat there, staring at the light, lost in thought. Then, something made him turn. He saw a man on a motorcycle looking at him. It took a second for his eyes to focus. The man looked familiar. Very familiar. Sam squinted, then his eyes went wide. He rolled down the window, the old crank handle squeaking. "Can I help you?" Sam asked, his voice uncertain. "Sam," Keanu said, his voice carrying over the idle of the engines. "It's Keanu. Please, don't drive away." Sam blinked in surprise. He knew the face from movies, but he also knew him from the shop. Keanu wasn't just the owner on paper, he was the guy who sometimes came in to watch the mechanics work, bringing donuts and asking questions about torque specs. "Mr. Reeves?" Sam asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" "I was at the shop," Keanu said. "I saw what happened. I heard what Greg said." Sam looked down at his hands on the steering wheel. "It's all right. It's just business." "I understand." "No, it's not all right," Keanu said firmly. "It's wrong. And it's about to get a lot more expensive for me, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because of the Porsche." Sam looked up, his interest peaked despite his sadness. "The silver 911, what happened to it?" "I let them work on it," Keanu admitted, looking pained. "Greg insisted. I came back early to check on it. They tried to start it, Sam. It made a terrible sound. A bang." Sam closed his eyes for a moment. He could picture it perfectly in his mind. The rush, the force, the lack of respect for the machine. "I told them," Sam whispered. "I told Greg that engine needed a soft hand." "I know," Keanu said. "Kevin told me. He said you warned them specifically about the bolts." The light turned green. But neither of them moved. The cars behind them honked, but Keanu ignored them. He kept his eyes on Sam. "I need you, Sam," Keanu said. "I don't trust anyone else to look at it. I'll pay you double your old rate. I'll pay you whatever you want. Just please, turn around and come back. Don't let my car die because of a manager's ego. Sam looked at the light, then at his toolbox on the seat next to him. He was tired. He wanted to go home and sit in his chair and forget about this day. But he was a mechanic. And a mechanic doesn't leave a sick car on the side of the road, even if the road is metaphorical. The damage is probably done, Sam said slowly. Maybe, Keanu replied. But if anyone can fix it, it's you. And I need to know the truth about what happened. I need you to be the judge. Sam let out a long breath. He put his truck in park and engaged the handbrake. All right, he said. I'll come back. Not for the money. But because that car is a piece of art, and it sounds like it's in pain. Keanu smiled, a genuine look of relief washing over his face. Thank you. Follow me. The ride back to the shop was different. Sam didn't feel like a failure anymore. He felt like a doctor being called in for an emergency surgery. The anger was still there, bubbling under the surface, but it was focused now. It wasn't about his pride, it was about the car. When they pulled back into the parking lot, the atmosphere had completely changed. The mechanics were standing outside, watching the road. When they saw Sam's truck pull in behind Keanu's motorcycle, a cheer went up. It wasn't a loud, rowdy cheer, but a sound of genuine respect and relief. Greg was standing by the door, looking pale. He had tried to clean up the mess in the shop, arranging tools and wiping down counters, but he couldn't hide the tension in his face. He saw Keanu take off his helmet, and then he saw Sam get out of the truck. Greg's mouth fell open slightly. Keanu walked past Greg without a word. He just pointed a finger at the office door. You. Inside. Wait for me. Greg looked like he wanted to argue, but one look at Keanu's eyes told him that would be a very bad idea. He scurried into the office like a frightened rat and closed the door. Sam walked into the bay. The air still smelled of burnt oil and fear. The Porsche was sitting on the lift, the hood open, looking wounded. Kevin and Ben were standing nearby, looking like guilty school children. It's okay, boys, Sam said softly as he walked past them. I'm not here to yell at you. Sam walked up to the car. He didn't touch it yet. He just looked. He observed the angle of the belts, the way the engine sat in the mounts. He could see where the urgency had taken over. Tools were scattered, rags were thrown aside. It was a messy crime scene. He walked to the workbench and washed his hands. He dried them carefully on a clean rag. Then, he put on his glasses. He stepped back up to the car and placed his hands gently on the fender. Can you hand me a flashlight? Sam asked Kevin. Kevin scrambled to get it. He handed it over, his hand shaking. Sam took it, his grip steady. He shined the light deep into the engine bay, down near the bottom of the engine block where the oil pan met the casing. See this? Sam said, speaking to Keanu, who was standing right beside him. Right here, where the casing meets the block. Keanu leaned in. It looks scratched. Scratched, and cracked, Sam said, his voice grim. When they forced the bolt out with the impact wrench, the shock wave traveled through the metal. The block is old aluminum. It gets brittle with heat and age. It couldn't take the vibration. There is a hairline fracture running right down into the crankcase. Sam pointed the light further. And see that's metal shavings. When the bolt snapped, pieces of it fell inside the engine. If we had started this car and driven it, those shavings would have circulated through the oil. Within 50 miles, they would have scored the cylinder walls. They would have destroyed the bearings. The engine would have seized, probably at high speed. It could have been dangerous. Keanu let out a low whistle. It would have blown up. It would have been a catastrophic failure, Sam nodded. The car would be scrap metal right now. Or worse, the driver could have been hurt. Sam straightened up and took off his glasses. He looked at Kevin and Ben. This is why we don't rush. This is why we listen to the metal. The car tells you what it can take. You forced it, and it fought back. Kevin looked like he was going to cry. I'm so sorry, Sam. I really am. I just wanted to do what Greg said. Sam put a hand on the young man's shoulder. I know, kid. You were put in a bad spot. But you have to learn to stand up for the car. The car can't speak for itself. You have to be its voice. Keanu was silent for a moment. He looked at the beautiful silver car, ruined by incompetence. Then he turned and looked at the office door where Greg was hiding. The calmness on his face vanished, replaced by a cold, hard anger. You saw this, Sam, Keanu said. You knew this would happen. You tried to stop it? I did, Sam said. But I wasn't the boss anymore. You are now, Keanu said. The words hung in the air. The mechanics looked at each other, then at Sam. Sam shook his head. Mr. Reeves, you don't have to. I'm not asking, Keanu interrupted gently but firmly. I bought this shop because I love cars. I love the history of them. I wanted a place where people cared about what they were building. I let a snake into the garden, and he poisoned it. Keanu turned toward the office. It's time to clean house. He walked to the office door. The shop went dead silent. Everyone watched. Keanu didn't knock, he opened the door and walked in. Sam followed a few steps behind, not to intervene, but to witness the end of this long, bad day. Inside the office, Greg was sitting behind the desk, pretending to look at a computer screen. He jumped up when Keanu entered. Mr. Reeves? I can explain. Greg started, his voice high and squeaky. It was a faulty part. That's all. It wasn't Kevin's fault, and certainly not management's directive. We can fix this. We have insurance. Keanu stood in the center of the small office. He looked at the papers on the desk, the shiny plaque that said General Manager, and finally, he looked at Greg. Stop talking, Keanu said quietly. Greg shut his mouth so fast his teeth clicked. Sam just showed me the crack in the engine block, Keanu said, his voice even. He showed me the shavings. He told me that if I had driven that car, I might be dead. Greg's face turned pale white. I didn't know. You did know, Keanu corrected him. Sam told you. He warned you. And you fired him for it? You valued your efficiency report over my life. You valued your ego over a classic machine. Keanu took a step closer. He didn't need to shout. His presence filled the room. I am the owner of this shop. I own the building, the lifts, the cars in the lot, and the business itself. And you, Greg, are a liability. Please, Greg whispered. I have a family. I need this job. So did Sam, Keanu said coldly. He has a lifetime of dedication to this place. You have a suit and a clipboard. Get your things. Greg stared at him. You're firing me. I'm not just firing you, Keanu said. I'm making sure you never work in luxury automotive management again. I will make it very clear to the industry board exactly what happened here today. Now, get out of my chair. Greg stood there for a moment, frozen. He looked at Sam, who was standing by the door, his face unreadable. Then Greg grabbed his jacket and his tablet. He pushed past them, humiliated, walking through the shop with his head down. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. He just got into his sedan and drove away, tires squealing. Keanu let out a long breath and sat down in the manager's chair. He looked at Sam. "I'm sorry, Sam. I should have been here. I should have known." Sam leaned against the doorframe. "We all make mistakes, boss. Even me. But you fixed this one." "I need a new general manager," Keanu said. "Someone who knows cars. Someone who knows people." Sam smiled, a small, tired smile. "I'm too old for that paperwork stuff." "I'll hire someone to do the paperwork," Keanu said. "I need you to run the floor. I need you to teach these kids the right way. The Sam way. What do you say?" Sam looked out the window at the shop floor. He saw Ben and Kevin cleaning up the bay, already treating the tools with more respect. He saw the Porsche, broken but not beyond hope. "Well," Sam said, pushing himself off the doorframe, "I guess we have an engine to rebuild." The silence that filled the garage after Greg's car sped away was not the heavy, suffocating silence of before. It was a different kind of quiet, a quiet of shock, relief, and waiting. The mechanics stood in a semicircle, looking at the office door where Keanu and Sam had disappeared. They looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. Should they go back to work? Should they leave? The usual dictator was gone, and the new order hadn't been established yet. The office door opened, and Sam walked out first. He didn't look like a defeated man anymore. He walked with a slow, steady gait, but there was a new energy in his step. Keanu followed right behind him. He had taken off his leather jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, revealing forearms that were stronger than they looked in the movies. Keanu walked to the center of the shop and clapped his hands together once. The sound was sharp and broke the trance. "All right," Keanu said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, but calm. "I know things have been tense around here. That changes right now. I apologize for letting it go on this long. I trusted the wrong people to run the day-to-day, and that was my mistake. But mistakes are there to be fixed." He looked around the room, making eye contact with Ben, Kevin, and the others. "I didn't buy this shop to make a quick buck. I bought it because I love machines, and I love the people who build them. I want this to be a place where craftsmanship matters more than speed. Where doing the job right is more important than finishing it 5 minutes early." He turned to Sam and placed a hand on the older man's shoulder. "Sam has agreed to come back. But not just as a mechanic. Sam is going to be the head of the shop floor. What he says, goes. If he says it takes 3 days, it takes 3 days. If he says a part is no good, we order a new one. Is that clear?" A murmur of agreement went through the group. Ben and Kevin were nodding their heads vigorously. "But there is a catch," Sam spoke up. His voice was raspy, but it carried authority. "I don't want to just be the boss who yells. I want to teach. We have a lot of young talent here." He nodded at Kevin, "but talent is nothing without guidance. We are going to slow down. We are going to fix this Porsche the right way. And we are going to learn how to do it together. Who's with me?" "I'm in," Ben said immediately. "Me too," Kevin added, stepping forward. "I'm sorry about the bolt, Sam." I really am. It's done, Sam said. Let's get to work. The atmosphere in the shop transformed instantly. The frantic, nervous energy was replaced by a focused, determined buzz. It wasn't the chaotic rush of the morning. It was the rhythm of skilled work. Sam walked over to the wrecked Porsche. He looked at the engine with a critical eye, diagnosing the damage like a doctor assessing a patient. Okay, he said to the group. This isn't going to be easy. The block is cracked. We can't just patch it. We have to pull the engine completely. The young mechanics groaned. Pulling an engine out of a Porsche was hard work. It was heavy, awkward, and tedious. But, Sam continued, while we have it out, we're going to do a full restore. We're going to clean every part. We're going to polish the valves. We're going to check every seal. When this car goes back together, it's going to be better than it was when it came off the assembly line 40 years ago. For the next few hours, the shop was a hive of activity. But it was different now. No one was running. No one was throwing tools. Keanu didn't just watch, he grabbed the wrench and got his hands dirty. He worked alongside Ben, helping him disconnect the wiring harness with patience. Take your time, Keanu told Ben. Feel the clip. Don't force it. Sam stood by the hoist, directing the operation. He watched Kevin carefully as they prepared to lift the engine. Steady now, Sam instructed. Watch the oil filter. If you catch it on the frame, you'll rip it off, and we'll have oil everywhere. Kevin listened. He moved the hoist inch by inch, his eyes glued to the gap between the engine and the car frame. Slowly, gracefully, the silver engine lifted free of the chassis. It hung in the air, dripping oil, looking vulnerable. Beautiful, Sam whispered. Now, lower it onto the stand. They worked late into the night. The sun went down, and the security lights flickered on in the parking lot, but inside, the work continued. Someone ordered pizza, and they ate standing up, grease on their hands and sauce on their chins. They talked. Not about quotas or corporate policies, but about cars. They talked about the first engine they ever rebuilt, about the sound of a V8, about the smell of burnt rubber. Sam told stories about the old days, when they used to fix cars with bubblegum and prayer, and how the principles hadn't changed, even if the tools had. It was the most human the shop had felt in years. By the end of the week, the Porsche was ready. The engine block had been welded by a specialist Sam trusted, a man who worked with metal like it was clay. They had reassembled the engine with painstaking care. Every bolt was torqued to the exact specification Sam read from his old, worn manual. Every gasket was seated perfectly. The engine was shiny, clean, and sitting proudly back in the car. It was Friday morning. Mr. Henderson, the owner, was due to arrive in an hour. The shop was clean. The floors had been swept. The tools were put away. Sam stood by the Porsche, wiping a final smudge off the fender with a microfiber cloth. He felt a nervousness in his stomach. He knew the car was good, but he always worried until the customer was happy. The door chimed. Mr. Henderson walked in. He looked around, surprised to see Sam standing there, looking confident and in charge. He saw Keanu leaning against a tool bench, drinking a coffee. Mr. Henderson, Sam said, walking forward with a slight limp in his step, but his head held high. Your car is ready. The wealthy man walked over to the silver 911. He ran his hand along the door. He looked under the hood. The engine looked brand new. It was meticulous. "I heard there was a problem earlier in the week," Mr. Henderson said cautiously. "There was," Keanu said, walking over. "We made a mistake. We tried to rush. We damaged your engine block." Mr. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. "Damaged it?" "But we fixed it," Sam interjected. "We didn't just patch it. We pulled it, welded the crack, and rebuilt the entire top end. She's stronger now than she was before. And we didn't charge you for the extra labor. That was on us." Mr. Henderson looked at Sam, then at Keanu, then at the young mechanics standing in the background, looking hopeful. He could sense the change in the room. He could smell the oil and the coffee and the pride. "Well," Mr. Henderson said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "I suppose the only test is the drive. May I have the keys?" Sam handed them over. They were heavy, brass keys. Mr. Henderson slid into the driver's seat. He buckled up. He took a breath and turned the key. The engine didn't grind. It didn't cough. It roared to life instantly, a smooth, throaty growl that resonated in everyone's chest. It was the sound of pure power, tamed and controlled. Mr. Henderson revved it slightly. The needle on the tachometer danced. He listened to the idle. It was steady as a rock. He turned off the car and stepped out, beaming. "That sounds magnificent, Sam. That sounds exactly like it did when I bought it 30 years ago." "She's a good car," Sam said, patting the roof. "She just needed a little patience." Mr. Henderson shook hands with Sam, and then with Keanu. "Gentlemen, you have earned a customer for life. I don't know what changed here this week, but keep it up." As Mr. Henderson drove away, the sound of the Porsche fading into the distance, the shop broke into cheers. It wasn't a wild party, but a genuine cheer of accomplishment. Ben high-fived Kevin. Keanu clapped Sam on the back. "I told you," Keanu said, smiling. "You're the best." "Just doing the job, boss," Sam said, though a blush was creeping up his neck. Keanu turned to the rest of the staff. "Okay, listen up. We're going to make some changes around here. No more efficiency ratings based on speed. We're going to rate ourselves on quality. And starting next week, Sam is going to hold workshops. We're going to learn the old ways. If you want to be a mechanic here, you're going to know how an engine works, not just what the computer screen tells you." The mechanics nodded. They were happy. They felt valued. They felt like craftsmen again. Keanu pulled Sam aside as the others began to drift back to their base. "Sam, I know you were thinking about retiring." "I was," Sam admitted. "I thought I was done." "I want you to stay for as long as you want," Keanu said. "And when you do decide to hang up your wrenches, I want you to help me pick the next person to run the floor. I want this place to stay this way. Honest. Human." Sam looked around the shop. He saw the young faces, eager to learn. He saw the cars, waiting to be fixed. He felt the familiar weight of the wrench in his hand. He wasn't tired anymore. He felt energized. "I think I can stick around for a little while longer," Sam said. "There are still a few cars out there that need saving." Keanu smiled and put on his leather jacket. "I have to go to a meeting, but I'll be back later." "You're in charge, Sam." Keanu walked out to his motorcycle. He put on his helmet and started the engine. As he rode away, he looked in the rearview mirror. He saw Sam through the open bay door, bending over a car, showing a young mechanic how to hold a wrench properly. The scene was simple, quiet, and perfect. The shop wasn't just a business anymore. It was a sanctuary. And the old mechanic wasn't a dinosaur. He was the heart that kept it beating. The sun was shining, the tools were clinking, and everything was exactly the way it should be.